Today, I am talking to Paula Rolls. Paula, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hello.
Good. Well, thank you for being on here. Um, I can see that you've got a very creative space behind you.
Yeah, well, this once was my dining room, but since all the kids have grown up, yeah, I've accommodated it. My husband is a handyman by trade, and so he's just built me this in system of shelves, and I've got a packing area on wheels, and I've actually even got that thing there is a Murphy bed. So if I have it comes down and there's a bed and a television packed behind it.
Well, that's incredible. That's amazing.
That's my spare room as well, but I have to clear up a lot to make
Yeah,
that happen.
that's fantastic. Okay, so our traditional first question is, what do you do?
Well, I run an online business with a my business partner. Her name's Tracy, and she lives about 4.5 hours away from me. So we met online, and we've been working together for probably 5 years now. So we meet 2 or 3 times a week online and discuss what we do. So we started off building a shop on Etsy, and it was for natural well-being products and yoga products, which is very much well, it's kind of both of our bangs, if you like, but it's more her bang than it is mine.
Yeah,
Um, and I started creeping in a few witchy products
yeah.
to because it kind of fitted, but it didn't fit. And I think it started to confuse the algorithm on Etsy somewhat. So we said, you know what, shall we just separate these businesses and actually go for it on the witchy thing, which made me really excited because I was like, yeah. So I've taken over the witchy side of things, and yeah, and I've so we've now got two separate shops on Etsy. Um, but that wasn't really enough for us because so we started exploring other avenues online, and yeah, so we're kind of everywhere really. We're on Fair. We've got obviously we've got two websites running, one for each business. We're on Amazon. And more recently, we've been doing a lot of work on TikTok. Um, and TikTok is going very well. And then
Yeah.
obviously somewhere in the middle of all of that, I met with Emma from Anathema and started monthly witchy markets, and I started coming to some of her evening workshops where I met you, um, and started to meet with the general community, which was big, which was rather wonderful.
See, I'm really fascinated by all of this because with that stuff and selling online, and you mentioned TikTok, TikTok's got this massive sort of witchy
It
uh,
has, yeah,
community, right? And it's sort of strange because for people who aren't involved in any of that type of thinking, right? It's almost like the technology has created the the type of things that people who are interested in, the occult or whatever, actually believed in, like a place that you went to that wasn't quite physical, you know, uh, where you could meet other beings. And it's sort of weird that we've created this almost by accident. I don't
yeah,
think it is by accident, but
yeah,
um, where there are these places that people commune that aren't real. I mean, not physical. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So TikTok being one of them. Um, And because obviously with that, you've got this massive reach, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. I do two lives a week on TikTok. So one is a standard market of all of my products, and I do that with my business partner. But the other live that we do that I've been doing for longer, we call it the witching hour. And there's three of us, so another two people that I met online via TikTok, and we come together every week and we
Yeah,
take a segment each, about 20 minutes each, and we all bring something different to the table, which is really nice. So I also have a folklore podcast. So I talk about the episode that I've done that week, and we
right.
we sort of analyze it and talk and have a general discussion about how that relates to modern day. So that's my segment, and then the next segment, well, currently, Lou, who does that, is looking at moon phases, and she also does spell work. So she'll demonstrate a spell using products around her home, using simple stuff, and breaks it down for people. And then the third section, which is definitely a little bit more interactive, is a lady called Tasha who's from the US, and she does tarot card work. And so sometimes she'll do a guided like visualization. She always puts three cards out, and we choose which card is we want, and then she talks about what that means and stuff. She's done some divination work on it. It's quite fun, and it's quite fast paced because we've only got 20 minutes each.
Yeah, that's good.
We are building a community from that, people that turn up really regularly.
Mm.
And so then we've created an online platform on Discord, um, sort of an online coven, if you like,
Yeah,
and they all go across to there after the live, and then everyone chats and interacts. So it's a place for people to come together. What's been really interesting for me is that the US community are are very isolated, are very lonely with being a witch and practicing their craft, and they are really still to this day heavily persecuted in
right.
their countries and in their country, should I say. So, like one of the ladies that comes on, she still has um, people spray painting stars and so on on her letterbox. They come into the shop and they're being abusive. The lady that does the live with me, she's got on the front of her shop a nice little gift shop, and as you get further back into the shop, it turns witchy, and she has to keep it a secret. She has to keep, and that seems really common play, which is obviously experiences that for myself in the UK, I've not had this.
Mm.
So they are wanting to meet online because that's a safe place for them. That's somewhere that they can meet and get together and talk and be with other like-minded people.
Yeah, that is fascinating because there was something else as well to do with America. I've been interested in herbal stuff. I forage and do things, and I
Yeah,
used to,
yeah, me too.
I do herbal medicine and what have you
Mm,
for myself, right? And I've always been interested in that way that people engage with herbs, because I grew up in Cornwall. My mother wasn't Cornish, but she had a lot of links with Cornwall. During the war, that she would be sent down to Cornwall, get away from London, and all the rest of it. I mean, she had family down there. Um, but it was all that sort of thing. Oh, if you stung yourself, you did this, and you did, and
yeah, yeah.
it was common practice, right, for people to have ways of dealing with stuff. Cures for warts and all that sort of thing. And obviously being in Cornwall, and I've mentioned this before actually, because although this is, the general sort of thing about this podcast, it's about creativity. So it gives me the excuse to speak to anybody about what what they do, because I'm always interested in how societies, um, have that effect on, community will have that effect on people and their creativity. So in Cornwall, there was a lot of stuff that, looking at it now, was pure magical thinking going on. The kids would talk about it, and it was just normal, you know. But about it's a particular time of year you could, if you looked in a mirror in this, you got a bucket of water and looked at it, you'd see things
Yeah,
and all that stuff, and that was just normal.
yeah,
Any kid would just talk about things like that. And of course, nowadays it's there, but it's because it's sort of found its way into sort of culture, with programs and the rest of it. Now, going back to the herbal thing, I was always interested by the fact the Americans are really hot on herbal remedies. There's a lot of people doing stuff
yeah,
about herbs. And of course, it only occurred to me the other day why that was the case. I mean, I must have been a bit thick, really. It's just like, well, if you're going to go and pay for ordinary medicine in America, it costs a fortune. So
yeah, that's
therefore,
why.
yeah,
Yeah,
so therefore they are looking for remedies for things because you probably don't want to keep going to the doctor and then having to pay or claiming on your insurance or whatever it is that they have to do. Now that's one part of it. So that's like a plus. And but interestingly, you saying about this, and it's probably got worse, I would have thought, because the Christianization of everything, well, weaponization of Christianity in America,
yeah,
to put, I think it's probably the best way of putting it, is just extraordinary that that would be happening now.
yeah,
That everybody else has sort of moved away from that perspective, although obviously Christianity is really baked into everything we've got, the legal system and everything else, the whole society is based on that. But it's not that people really are adhering like the Americans seem to be doing, where it becomes really quite nasty.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it is the excuse me, the influence of the church, the people that I've spoke to, have been brought up with Christian upbringings and going to church regularly. And yeah, it's a real issue. It's a real
Yeah,
issue.
and bizarrely, the churches that are having this amount of impact in this country, we find them rather farcical. The sort of born again evangelical, let's, whatever. It's sort of bizarre that it's that potent there. And I just don't understand how that is, there's obviously reasons for it, but yeah. So that's a fascinating point, you're saying that that's their safe place, if you like.
It's very sad that, and yeah, and it just highlights the innate need in all of us, I think, that we need to find our people. We need to find place where we feel we belong, where we can say what we think uncensored. And
Yeah, well, it's about community, isn't it? We are social
yeah,
beings, right?
yeah,
And even if you are a little bit different from everybody else, you still need your gang. You still need your group. Um, because nobody really is that isolated. Um, I mean, there are some people. This is. I think this is interesting because it's such a web of things about thinking that there are some people who are quite happy to become the hermit, but there aren't that many of them. And strangely, I was talking to somebody the other day who's the closest thing to a hermit. He isn't anymore, but he certainly was when he was younger. And he was sort of like wanted that isolation. He's an artist, and he wanted that isolation to go off and create. And he would find himself in some remote cottage in Wales, miles from anywhere.
mm,
And then that was too busy for him, so he ended up traveling to Finland, you know, to the sort of the Russian border to, you thought, oh, okay. And Iceland, he spent a lot of time in Iceland. So yeah. And that was driven by some sort of almost desert fathers type isolation. But the desert wasn't hot, it was cold where he was heading, interestingly. But yeah, so let's going back to what you're saying about the sort of community. I think that's really, really fascinating what you're saying, because I didn't realize it was quite as bad
Mm.
as you were saying. So the podcast then. So this is a really cool idea, and you did talk to me about this. The what you do, the lives. So you run it as a market,
No,
your
no.
your section, the
I,
live.
yeah. I've got two lives. So one live is the market where I just set up all my stuff and we do a live and we try to have a theme every week. So it might be this week was abundance. So
Yeah,
we got out all of our abundance type products and talked about the properties of, because I, like you, am very into my herbs. Um and yeah, I have a background of well, I was brought up vegan, which was pretty unheard of all those years ago.
yes.
My grandparents were actually vegetarian too.
Oh, right.
So that was
Right.
radical. Yeah, they went to prison during the war for being conscientious objectors, and
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
it took about a week for them to sort any food out in prison because no one had heard of vegetarianism. So yeah, I come from a hippie bunch of parents. So I was always into plants, always into uh, healthy living, food, so on. And I think as a young adult, I kind of branched off from that and went a bit junk food um and of course I was a nurse, um, which in a way was a bit of a letdown to my mother because I was like literally giving out drugs for a job. But I've kind of gone full circle on that because obviously I'm not nursing anymore and yeah, I'm much more into my herbal way of life. I like to make tinctures too. I did a herbalism, like an online course, learning about all the properties of it. So yeah, so the theme was we were talking about calendula and the property and stuff like that
Yep.
this week.
Yep.
So that's the live, but the podcast, um, that's a fairly recent thing. I think we're 10 episodes in now. Um, but it's been well received by our community. We try to make it, I've listened to quite a few podcasts on things like witch history, for example, and I
Mm.
find them, even though I'm quite nerdy, I think it's fair to say, but I find them quite fact heavy. There's lots of dates, lots of this, lots of that, and it's a bit oh, and I sometimes I find myself just drifting off and then coming back and thinking, Quest, I've missed half a century in date
Yeah, 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 yeah,
facts.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we didn't want to do that. We wanted to make it lighter for people that are witch curious, that are just sort of getting involved. So it's we write a story each week. So there's a story that we read, and then we pull that story apart in discussion and talk about the herbs, the tools that are used, what that life must have been like, and it's kind of modern day connections.
Mm.
And then we
Mm.
tap into perhaps a case study
Yeah.
that happened in factual information, but keeping that section small. So that's been the series so far. Taking we're into series 2 next week, and we're going to be looking at the witch trials in various countries. And we're taking like one witch trial in each episode. But again, it's going to be told in a storytelling kind of way and then pulling it apart a bit afterwards, but more of a chat, more of a conversation, less this date, that date. But we wanted
Yeah.
to delve a little bit further into kind of the politics of the day, what was happening,
Yep.
who was in charge,
Yeah.
and you know what was going on in the church, and just kind of why people got to thinking what they were thinking. And
Yeah. And that is fascinating because again, I think you can't understand history and people's motivations until you put magic and spirituality back in the picture. And
yeah,
often history has done that. Like you say, it's dates, right? It's all about dates and this and that and whatever. But it's not about what are the motivators for people. And obviously, people's ways of surviving and thriving based on connecting with the world that they they didn't well, let's just call it unseen as a thing. So they had a way of dealing with it. So that, they'd have, as you say, I call it strategies, whatever it would be.
Yeah.
If they had a problem with something, they would have a way of dealing with it. Um, and those things were fairly, I won't say they were obviously fairly consistent because we
Yeah.
know people like the Anglo-Saxons and the whatever and the Romans and whatever, they all had, and obviously the Egyptians and people like that, they all had ways of dealing with situations that we would look at and go, well, that's magic. Okay. And then suddenly it becomes not the thing to do. The church suddenly decides, and they were quite happy with people being magical until suddenly there was a period of time when it became not the thing to do, right? And that is steeped, obviously, in society, politics, and obviously you know this really well. But the point about it is that those things, people still carried on doing stuff. And there's a very fine line, isn't there, between the people who were, the cunning folk who fixed things. But you look at what they do and you go, well, that's magic, right? And the people that were then like, well, you can't do that. That's witchcraft. It's okay. So that's okay. So what's what's going on here? So, and again, a lot of it is just the excuse that you fell out with somebody, and your face didn't fit anymore, which is difficult. And interestingly, because you're saying you'd been a nurse, um, a lot of those people who fell foul of persecution were people that would have been obviously not nurses, but they would have been midwives. And
I absolutely think I would have been a wise woman in my day. Yeah, because I was a mental health nurse, so not a general nurse, but yeah, all of the skills that I learned as a mental health nurse very much fits within the wise woman. And then,
yes,
the way my upbringing was definitely along the lines of the kitchen witch. And yeah, I mean all of the elements really. And for me, it comes down when I read all the stories, it's ego. It's ego at the top of everything. It's when people feel that they haven't got enough control or enough power that's when it turns. And so there's this duality of ego, but also fear.
yep,
And those two together are just such a dangerous combination.
yep, yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to because normally I asked this question a lot earlier, but when you were growing up, you've already said that you came from an interesting sort of
Yeah.
unusual family in the circumstances of time and everything, particularly your grandparents being
Yeah.
conscientious objectors, right? So, so where did you grow up?
Um, I've lived most of my life in Bournemouth. I was born in Liverpool, but that was a
Oh,
very brief affair. And then, yeah, then came down to Bournemouth. I moved away to Salisbury to train to be a nurse, but came back down once I'd qualified. Yeah.
so you use the term kitchen witch um, in your upbringing. So what sort of thing would your mum be up to?
Well, obviously, both my parents were very serious about food. Being a vegan, um, in that generation was still very unheard of. I mean, I remember going to school and nobody knew.
Mm.
Most people thought being vegetarian meant that you didn't eat vegetables and you only ate meat. That's sort of the wrong way round.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think school dinners were still going on then, and my mum had to pack me something separate for me to take in to add to the school dinner, which was always, I just remember feeling very embarrassed by it all, really, that I
mm.
was different even then, and everyone would look on and make fun of the weird peculiarities that my my parents bestowed on me. But so food was a huge part of not only wanting to eat healthy, wanting to be. I think my parents came at it from different views. My father was very animal rights
Yeah,
person, huge lover of animals. and my mother was much more to do with health. Um, so we didn't go to the doctors as children. We went to
Yeah.
herbalists and we
Yeah. Yeah.
had terrible tasting medicine that made us recover really quickly, so we didn't
Yeah.
have any more. But that was at, par course. Um, she used food to heal us and to make us better. So there were, when we were ill, foods came out that
Yeah.
were garlic and so on. She's always veered on that path for us. That was very much innate. I mean, she didn't do rituals and things like that. My
No.
mum's, but yeah, food was always enormous part
Yeah.
of our life.
Yeah. But I think in actual fact, what you're saying, this understanding of the connection between, well, obviously we use terms like the gut mind connection and all this sort of
Yeah,
thing, don't we now? But people were really aware of how food affected your mood.
much more than they are now, really. I feel like we took a step backwards. They had a much better understanding.
Yes, I did. And of course, you're talking, you mentioned about your grandparents and the war. I mean, rationing was one of those things. Really, when you look back at the rationing that the British government instituted, it was pretty amazing that they managed to pull all that together and get, everybody having the same rations. And that there was obviously a lot of understanding about the link of, what you needed nutritionally
Mm.
to survive. Because we often sort of think that that's more of a modern thing, but they really understood it. And I think that was something that people are, and I can speak about my own mother being like this. They had a vested interest in what you ate. Whether then she wasn't a vegetarian, but there was a definite interest in what type of foods you needed to have to be
Yeah,
well. And it
yeah,
wasn't just you, and this is what happens in society now as a general thing. You just eat to fill yourself up, which is not what people did back then. That was not the idea, was it? You ate to nourish yourself, which is a completely different thing. And in a way, I think that is much more, but well, you could look at this in lots of different ways, but you think of it much more of the way that you would use food to change you, which is a lot more of a witchy thing than
yeah. We
isn't
are
it?
what we eat.
Exactly.
But the
Exactly.
I think society wise, we've like it's because the roles of women and men have changed, and women are now going out to work and taking that as a choice or even as feeling like it's a need
Mm.
financially to be able to provide your kids with the same life as Joe Blogs next
Yeah,
door.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That the emphasis of cooking great food and healthy, nourishing food has kind of long left, and it's now convenient food and junk food and processed food, which is all just terrible for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I I my I got four daughters who have now got kids of their own. And one of the things that was essential was that everybody sat around the table and ate together, right? There was none of this business, and most of their friends were doing this, were wandering off in front of the television and eating. And there was always food available by the time they got home from school. So I did a lot of the cooking during the week, and there was something I would make something in the morning. And it's interesting that that's just what you had to do because of time and being able to. But everything was cooked. It was nothing bought in. Apart from anything else that was too expensive to buy pre-packaged stuff at the time. Um, but there, the way that's affected how they are and how they feed their own kids is a real, and I can actually see the effect that they sit at the table. There's none of that business of TV dinners and what have you. The food is cooked. it's a healing thing, but it's
Mm.
also a social healing thing. And I think that's another element that we've sort of lost. The French are great at this, having
Yeah,
you know, sitting down and eating and
yeah,
talking,
yeah.
and I think these are things that we let go of at our peril, really. Um, because that might be okay for a couple of nights, but as soon as you get into a habit, it just makes things, you know. So yeah, that's really interesting. So the the vegetarianism then, you said that you got to a point where where does that you started moving away from that, and you said you got onto the junk food thing for a bit.
I think that my parents, my mum particularly, because she was so health orientated, was very strict with food. We didn't have junk food. Um, I think we had one Easter egg a year kind of thing, and she would break it up into small pieces that we were allowed. There was no binging going on.
No,
And so we didn't have treats, sweets and things like that. That just wasn't allowed. So our midnight raids of the food cupboard would be like dried fruit. That was about as good as it got.
yeah,
Um, so I guess when I had my own money, um, yeah, I kind of went a bit crazy on the chocolate front for a while, just
it
because
was yeah, well,
I'd been starved of it for so
Mhm.
long. That's the trouble, I think, perhaps when you go on extremes, that you should perhaps be moderately
Yes, yeah,
allowed.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just went off and did my training. It was quite amusing. Like when I started my training was the first time I'd obviously moved out of home and was living with other people in the nursing accommodation. And when we were doing one of our introductory talks in the training, people were asking, the teachers were asking, what are your fears? What's your biggest fear about doing this course? And most people flagged up either giving injections, that seemed terrifying to a lot of people, and or dealing with violent, aggressive people. And my fear, my biggest fear, was feeding people meat. That was the thing that I was the most like, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna do it. I can't bear the smell, can't bear the look, can't bear any of it. I can do all the rest, but I can't do that. So that was something and sharing a kitchen even with people that were cooking meat, and
Mm,
yeah, it was always an issue for
mm,
me.
mm, mm. I know it's tricky, isn't it? I know. Yeah, I've been through that situation because I spent a lot of time being a vegetarian, you know, earlier on, only because not because of any sort of particular idealistic thing. It's just I went through a period of time, I found it really difficult to digest meat. This was like sort of weird. But yeah, and again, you lose the I won't say well, you lose the taste. It's not that. It's the smell of it is sort of a bit
I've
difficult to
always
do,
I've
isn't
always
it?
thought that I'm autistic, and I've always thought that my superpower is my sense of smell. Um, because it seems to be much stronger than it is for other people,
Mm.
which is, double-sided, because when something smells good, and I'm obsessed with perfume and good smells and things, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. But when something smells bad, it's really amplified and can have me running for the hills,
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, isn't it? And
being
you
sick.
and it's perfect for what you're doing with like remedies and goodness knows what else. You're putting herbs and stuff together. Smell is a really important
Yeah, and yeah,
thing to deal with. So, okay, so that you got to the nursing because I'm quite interested in this. There's lots of people that I know who are involved in magic were nurses or they were scientists actually, right?
yeah.
A couple of really well-known witches who got science degrees and goodness knows what else. So that's an interesting thing that suddenly you've got that side of it. You're fulfilling, obviously, the thing of looking after people, which I think is an amazing thing. Uh, um, but you know, you're dealing with modern medicine, which is literally a demon in itself, isn't it? It's a sort of interesting concept. Um, did you start becoming interested in, right, really developing the sort of thing of herbal remedies then, or was that before?
No, no, no. I think I threw myself into mental health nursing with really driven to help people,
Yeah,
but also really driven to understand. And I think it's probably a lot of people that go into mental health nursing, I think, are just, again, trying to look for their people, trying to find a framework that
yeah,
explains who they are,
yeah,
why they are, why they do the things they do. And
yeah,
obviously, at the time, I didn't know I was autistic. So there were things that I did that were quirky, that were odd, and I needed to find answers to what that was all about. So it was an interesting journey. Obviously, the medicine world is heavily medication based.
mm,
Um, and it comes down to time and resources.
yeah, yeah,
And people don't have the time. If you imagine someone's come to a mental health hospital, they've had a whole lifetime of experiences and things happen to them that have brought them to that point. And really, I mean, even today, when you get referred for counselling or steps of well-being, whatever it is, you get a 6-week course that's supposed to sort you out in that time and undo all of that lifetime of experiences.
yeah,
Um, it's a tricky one
yeah,
because there are not the resources there.
yeah. No. And something like mental health is such a complicated thing, isn't it?
It is very complicated, yeah. And it
Uh,
was it was not very heard of. I think when I started nursing, a lot of our work was to promote mental health. I mean, I was called a psychiatric nurse then.
yeah,
It's
yes,
changed, it changed mid-career to mental health nurse.
yeah,
Um, because and even the institutions changed in that period.
mm,
They there was the original belief that the asylums that they built on top of hills in the middle of nowhere, that people should be pushed away and sort of locked up for that period of time. And um, with everything on site, the farm, the hairdresser, it was
yeah,
a community. And then that's changed to now care in the community.
yeah,
A massive change in that time.
yeah.
And you think that the first mental health drugs um, really were 1945-ish. It's really quite a modern new thing.
Yeah.
So I think, certainly when I started, they were very much in the experimental, trying things to see what worked and what didn't work.
Mm,
Um, I mean, even things like this is just an interesting anecdote. ECT, electric shock treatment, which is so sort of controversial.
mm,
But it actually came about because they had a lot of people with what we now know to be schizophrenia that were very psychotic and very unwell, and they had them all in units because they didn't know what to do with these unpredictable people, and they didn't know how to treat them or how to help them, and they noticed some bright spark noticed that this group of subjects that they had didn't have epilepsy. And so they thought, okay, what if we induce epilepsy?
right.
Will the psychosis go away? Because we know how
Wow.
to deal with epilepsy. Um,
Wow.
so that's what they did. They gave them this electric shock treatment. And of
I
course,
had no, I didn't know that
I
at all.
know. Um, so and obviously it didn't cure the psychosis, but what they noticed was it had a huge impact on people's moods.
Yeah.
And it really elevated people that were in a very low mood state. So that's
Wow.
that's the beginning of how that was then used. to for
Yeah.
people that are in serious depression.
Yeah, that's fascinating because again, a lot of that, you look at ways of people dealing with things that whatever the trend is at the moment, obviously electricity, right, at that period of time becomes sort of like the way of
Trying to use it.
understand
Yeah.
yeah, understanding how things work. It's the electrical situation in the brain and all this sort of business, right? Whereas, you get another way of thinking comes in, and then those it sort of mutates into other things. You see people talking about, computer programming type of thing about thoughts, how we program ourselves to think in a particular way. And so did you get at that point when, you were dealing with this for your, obviously working within the mental health thing, did that start you questioning stuff, or how do you start working on well-being from a holistic, and obviously
I
because
guess,
of vegetarianism you already had that, but that.
yeah, I think my upbringing was always in my ear, if you like, the voice on my shoulder that was not questioning, but wanting to bring it into. I was never very medication driven as a mental health nurse. I wanted to help people to help themselves,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and to sort of help people to understand that whole picture, that holistic picture. Medication, that model of thinking is very limited. And it's not that I don't think there is a place for medication in mental health. I do think there is. And I think it's, there's a lot of bad press about it.
yeah.
There is an awful lot of bad press. But, if you were to spend time in a mental health hospital and see the depths of despair that some people have experienced, there's a place for it. There's a place for
Yes,
ECT. And
yes.
there are people that ask for, beg for ECT. So it has a bad press. And there was a time when ECT, for example, was used on everyone. Let's see if it cures this. Let's see if it cures that. Because we are really in its infancy of experimenting what works and what doesn't work. And
Yes,
medications have nasty side effects.
yes,
And people are only really learning the consequences of those side effects that are irreversible, much later,
yeah.
because the NHS is only doing what it knows best at that moment in time. And
Yes, yes, of course, and that's the thing about the modern medicine is really really good at dealing with something that is critical, right? Like
yeah,
this has happened. You've had an accident, you've broken your leg, you did this,
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
But things that are sort of subtle, that are complex, it begins to be that, as you say, the side effects thing. You give a tablet for this, and then this starts to happen. And, because we're dealing with complex systems, any any system like this, human body, for instance, as soon as you start to affect one area, something else is changing. And that is almost not possible to work out because logically, we're great at doing things that are two-dimensional, if you see what I mean. It's anything with nuance is really difficult to assess, because there is a lot of generalizations and simplifications. So going back to your remedies and stuff like that, then. So I'm assuming a lot of this is, you've done stuff on yourself. You've treated yourself with
yeah.
food and all the rest of it. Um, Are there sort of any sort of standout moments when you've gone, I did this, and it's like, oh my God, that's changed everything. Is there anything where you've had something where you've
I
really sort of
don't know.
it really confirmed to you that this works? I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm saying sometimes there are event times where you go like, oh my goodness, that has changed everything.
I I tend to think that I guess like I think I listened to one of your podcasts and you said magic is not fast. It's not in
No,
your face and instantaneous. And
no,
I think healing from the inside is the same. It's a whole picture. It's not just one thing here and one thing there. It's a combination of finding what works for you.
yeah,
And I think that there are an awful lot of people out there that don't want to do the work, that they would rather take the one pill and have
yeah,
it
yeah,
magically fixed. And it's
yeah,
not the solution.
yeah,
It's about that eating,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
eating
yeah,
well
yeah,
every day, all
yeah,
day, every day.
yeah,
It's about doing that exercise, getting out in nature every day. It's about noticing beauty everywhere you go. It's about
yeah.
feeding your mind with those
No,
positive things.
absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, it's all, obviously we were talking about the fact, I've been a musician all my life
Yeah,
and I've done a lot of teaching. And again, it's like the sort of thing, well, you used to get people saying, how long will it take me to become a really good guitar player? And
yeah,
it's, well, it depends how much practice you do and how much dedication it is. And it's like in their head, it's almost like, well, if I do this for a short period of time, no, it's not quite like that. It's a
no,
it's a it's a continual process, right? Which is what you're saying. So as you, it's that I think I might have made a reference to this with regard to like using, because to me, psychology and magic interlock and
yeah,
overlap, right? But that the background effect of things where if you do certain things, it puts you in a better state of mind. If you eat certain things, it certainly, gives you a better state of mind and all the rest of it. And it's not the silver bullet, is it? It's not the thing that you do that once and it's done.
no,
And I think that's one of the things, again, we want this quick fix in
we
society, don't
do.
we? We want to buy the course that enables us to do the thing that's over the weekend, and which is another one of those weird
Yeah,
sort of ideas that you can encapsulate something and then just buy it or sell it. It's sort of strange. Cool. So you've got the podcast thing. You can, if you give me some details about the the links and stuff, I could put them on the show notes, which
thank
would be
you.
really good because I think what you're doing is absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
Um, and we should have a quick tour around
Oh,
your room because this was, you showed me
hang on. I'll
the
unpack.
nerve center of your.
So
Wow,
here's
this is amazing.
my picking, uh yeah, where I've got all my
Yeah,
book.
yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. That's incredible.
The Then that's my Murphy bed under there. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
this is I would have tidied up, but this is like my packing
yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
boxes and so on. And then can you see all my herbs?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh God.
Lots of herbs and essential oils.
Yeah,
Yeah, more.
yeah, that's fantastic.
So not
That's
as
obviously
much.
taken a bit of time to build up.
It has. It's sort of started as one little table here,
Yeah,
and then gradually I was like, I need more, I need more, I need more.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
now it's kind of tipped into my hallway as well because all my marketplace stuff is out there separate. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
growing thing, but that's all good.
Yeah, it's good. Oh well. Well, Paula, that's been brilliant. Thanks ever so much. It was a really interesting chat, actually.
Thank you for having me.
And no, that was really good. And yes, so if you send me the links, I'll put them in the show notes, and I'll obviously link you into everything when it goes out. That's really cool. So
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much. Bye bye.
Yeah, okay. Don't disappear. We'll just turn the recording off. See you then.
Okay.